know what that sound means. It is time for the Dmgaming Morning Show, ladies and gentlemen. College football special. It's Saturday. Football is in the air. Some big things going on in the college football scene. Got a pretty big upset, y'all, as well as something special going on for not only the channel, but for you, the listeners, the subscriber base, and the college football gaming community. The Gaming Morning Show. Good morning, everybody. It's yours truly, Mr. Dmgaming himself, Andre Dorsey. Thank you. Welcome, y'all. Welcome. It is Saturday. College football is in the air. You can taste it. You can smell it. Ring the bell. School is out. Let's get it. I'm excited to bring y'all this college football special Saturday. Let's kick it off, man. There was a huge upset in the world of college football last night. Well, really last night. Yeah, it was last night in my town. Anyway, we'll backtrack a little bit to Thursday's matchup against Texas and Iowa State, which Texas won 17-7. We talked about that game. Wow is really all I can say, because this game, y'all, was Texas didn't look very well against Iowa State. Now we know that Iowa State sometimes does play the Longhorns pretty close and things of that nature. Texas, and this is all gonna tie in, because remember this, last week Texas went. Remember the game prior to the Iowa State game, Texas went toe to toe with USC. Could have probably won that game, but they didn't. You know, they didn't win it.
Iowa State hosting Texas in their Big 12 opener, first quarter action.
Nope. Just trying to get some highlights for y'all there. Doesn't look like that's gonna work out for me. Let me see. Nope. Oh well. We gotta get that fixed anyway. So I guess we'll have to go with what we got. The score was 17-7. Texas, remember, they played USC very, very close in their prior game. They lost to Maryland. Anyway, the game was ugly. And I just don't know about football in general this year, because, you know, teams that you figure would do good. Now, you got some teams that we know are good that are just doing good, but I digress. Well, they ended up beating the Cyclones, needless to say, in a close one. But last night, remember we talked about those big-time teams, those undefeated teams and things of that nature. Well, guess what? USC against Washington State. Now, Washington State is ranked 16th in the nation. Okay, they're not a pushover team. They're definitely not a pushover team. And they went into this game undefeated. Okay, they beat. Yes, you heard it right. They beat USC last night. Yes, they beat USC. Number 5th ranked USC Trojans with the score of 30-27. They won it on the field goal. Oh my gosh, y'all. This game, if you stayed up to watch it, you really got a treat. Yes, you're hearing that right. It is the first time that Washington State has beat a ranked opponent at home in over 10 years, man. 10 years, that is a long time to play a ranked opponent. So I'm going to call the domino effect for this weekend in college football because you have USC who has gone down, which USC almost lost to Texas. So is USC who we think they are, or is Washington State who we didn't believe that they were? I mean, give them some credit, man. You know, it was a very exciting game. It was really a very exciting game. Now you look back at you might say, well, who has Washington State played? They're 5-0, whoop to do. Well, they started out with a subdivision opponent, beating them 31-0. I want to say it was Middle Tennessee State. No, that wasn't who they played. Okay. Boise State was their second game, and they beat them 47-44 in a very close game. Then they beat Oregon State 52-23 and thrashed Nevada 45-7. And of course, last night, beating USC 30-27. Now, next matchup they have is against Oregon in Eugene. Yeah, it gets tough for them. I mean, the Pac-12 isn't the toughest conference, but definitely, a conference that you want to pay attention to, because if Washington State can run the table, we could be looking at them in the college football playoff. And wouldn't that be refreshing to see a team that you did not expect, a team that nobody looked at and said, this team is going to be. See, that's what I like. That's what I love about college football. The fact that a team can come out of nowhere and be ranked one of the top teams. Because let's be honest, if Washington State runs the table, they're going to look and say, hey, they beat USC. Hey, they beat Oregon. Hey, they beat Stanford. They beat Utah. They're a shoo-in. I'm Washington State. I am rooting for you to make it to not only make it to the playoffs, but make it to the championship game, because I want to see somebody else besides Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Florida make some noise for the Cougars, y'all. Can we get behind this team or what? Then they follow Oregon up with Cal. They play at Cal, so they have 2 back-to-back road games before coming back home against Colorado, going back on the road against Arizona, and then playing at home against Stanford before going back on the road for 2 very tough games against Utah, who's ranked number 20 right now, and number 6 ranked Washington on the road. So their schedule is cut out for them. It's not going to be an easy road, but my God, if they could run the table, there is no reason why Washington State should not be in the college football playoff come time to pick these teams. USC, their schedule, they played Western Michigan. They opened the season up against Western Michigan. They won the game, but it was 49-31. Now, don't knock me. Western Michigan is not a bad football team. Then they played Stanford, blew them out 42-24, and Stanford was ranked number 14th at the time. And then they had the game against Texas in USC, mind you, a very close game, 27-24, before playing in Berkeley against Cal, winning that game 30-20. And then another road game, which they lost 30-27. Now, USC has Oregon State. Then they have number 20th ranked Utah. And then they travel to face off against Notre Dame, number 22 in the nation right now. And then they on the road again to Arizona State University, at home against Arizona, on the road against Colorado, and at home against UCLA, which we know the USC-UCLA game tends to be a good one. So USC actually has a chance to run the table as well. And there is one of those things, it's one of those things, y'all, where if USC runs the table, that could actually work out in Washington State's favor. And could we see them in the Pac-12 championship game? I like the Pac-12. I used to love watching the Pac-12 because, I was a huge Oregon fan. And it was one of those things where the Pac-12 wasn't the baddest conference in the land, but they definitely had some Bulldogs in there, if you know what I'm saying. So, big story. That's the biggest story for right now, Washington State upsetting USC to remain undefeated, mind you. Remember what we talked about yesterday? And there was another match off of undefeateds. Number 14 ranked Miami at Duke. Miami Hurricanes coming away with the victory in that one, 31-6. Yes, Miami Hurricanes remain undefeated, number 14th in the nation. Now, this is currently, so, the new rankings haven't come out. It's going to be very interesting to see where them and Washington State fall. If Washington State will leapfrog Miami, because Miami's number 14, but they beat an unranked opponent in Duke, but Duke was undefeated as well. This is their first loss of the season. Washington State was undefeated, and they're still undefeated, and they beat USC, but they did it at home too. So it's going to be very interesting to see where those chips fall. Nebraska against Illinois. Nebraska coming away with the victory against the Fighting Illini. The final score was 28-6 in that one, winning on the road. Also, BYU at Utah State. Brigham Young thrashed. Yes, they got thrashed by Utah State. Final score, the Utes 40. No, not the Utes. The Utes. That's Utah. My bad, y'all. My mistake there. Yeah, get your laughs in. Get your laughs in. I make mistakes. So what? Yeah. Utah State won the game 40-24 against Brigham Young University. Now, backtracking a little bit to the Miami-Duke game, looking at Miami's remaining schedule there in the ACC, they actually had a game that was canceled, mind you. They're first in the Coastal Conference right now. They faced off against Bethune-Cookman in the first game, winning 41-13. At Arkansas State, it's safe to say that they probably would have beat Arkansas State, but you never know. And their game at Florida State has been postponed, and that was due to the hurricane, which, y'all, Florida State's number 11 in the land. Would Miami have beaten Florida State? We will find out later, because guess what? That game has been moved to next week. And they're playing in Tallahassee. They're playing in Florida State. So it's going to be very interesting to see there. Miami, I'm going to be honest with y'all. Miami's undefeated, yes, but they really haven't played anybody. Duke, undefeated, yeah. They beat Toledo 52-30. That was a pretty, you look at 30 points. Okay, yeah, they could have scored those in the second half. Beat us, I don't know. Could Florida State be a real test for the Miami Hurricanes? I'm going to have to say no. And the reason why is because Florida State has so many injuries right now, especially losing their starting primetime quarterback in the first game of the year. DeAndre Francois. I was excited to watch that kid play. He looked very good. But, Florida State is Florida State. They're going to reload and come at you. Then they pushed back the Georgia Tech game to the following week because they were going to play Georgia Tech, I want to say the week that they're playing Florida State, but they basically pushed it back. So they'll play Georgia Tech after Florida State, and then they have Syracuse. They'll go on the road to North Carolina, and then they'll play number 12th ranked Virginia Tech at home. Virginia Tech has a huge game tonight against Clemson. We'll cover that. That's the game to watch tonight. And then they also will play Notre Dame at home and Virginia at home. So they have three home games. Pretty good. That could work out in the Canes' favor before finishing on the road against Pitt. And you do not want to count out Pittsburgh by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. So Miami, as far as looking at who they've played, I'm not sold on Miami yet to count them in as a team to be in the said unsaid NCAA playoffs. You're looking at Duke's schedule. They thrashed the subdivision team 62-7. Then they beat Northwestern, which Northwestern isn't a bad team. Duke beat Northwestern 41-17 at home. They had 3 home games to open up the season. They beat Baylor 34-20, and then they beat North Carolina on the road 27-17 before losing to the Canes at home 31-16. So, man, can we count on Duke? It's really going to tell the tale of how they played the rest of the season, because they do have a very tough schedule, they go on the road against Virginia, and then they play Florida State at home. They play Pitt at home, and then they travel to Virginia Tech, which we know it's not easy playing in Blacksburg. You know what I'm saying? And then they also travel on the road against Army before it finishes season at home against Georgia Tech, and then traveling to Wake Forest. So they got a rough patch coming up for them, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Duke Blue Devils come out. I know what y'all saying. Dmgaming, why you talking about Duke? Don't nobody want to hear about Duke, because I like rooting for the underdogs. We like to know what these teams are facing. Some big key matchups today, y'all. Some big key matchups. In the top 10, some of these top 25 matchups, you have Northwestern at Wisconsin. Yes, Northwestern at Wisconsin. That is a 10 a.m. game. It's nationally televised. It's going to be on ABC at Camp Randall Stadium. Northwestern. Yes, Northwestern. You do not want to count Northwestern out of any game. They've only lost one game. They opened up the season against Nevada, winning 31-20 before losing to Duke, an undefeated Duke team, 41-17, and then thrashed Bowling Green 49-7. So this will be their fourth game of the year. Now, they are definitely not looking ahead, because if they are, their knees are going to be shaking, almost buckling, because after Wisconsin, they have Penn State, and yes, Penn State. But they have Penn State at home. Yes, man. Penn State's running back is off the charts good. But, y'all, I don't know. We'll talk about him a little bit later when we get to Penn State's game. And then they go on the road against Maryland before playing two back-to-back home games against Iowa and Michigan State, which is very important. Those are two very good teams. And if you want to play anybody at home, those games, Northwestern has some key games at home. Now, I know you might say, well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be Penn State. Man, I'm going to tell you something. A home game will bring out the best in the team. So keep that in mind, especially a ranked team, because I guarantee you everybody's looking at what Washington State did to USC, and they're saying, you know what? We can do that too. Giant killers. And then they travel to Nebraska before coming back-to-back home games again against Purdue and Minnesota, finishing off the season against the Fighting Illini in Illinois. So Northwestern, I'm going to be honest. I mean, it's early in the college football season, but if you're looking at the schedules, you're looking at what's going on, you got some teams that could surprise some people. You got some teams that could come out and turn some heads, make some noise, and we could be looking at a potential mix-up when it comes to playoff time. Wisconsin, they're undefeated right now at 3-0. They're number 2 in the Big Ten West. They're number 2 in the Big Ten. They're in the Western Division. They started out against Utah State, thrashed them 59-10 at home, and they had another home game against Florida Atlantic, winning that game 31-14, and then they traveled to Brigham Young, won that game 42-6. So most points they've put up against them so far has been 14, but at the same token, Washington. Not Washington. I'm stumbling over myself this morning. Wisconsin, who have you played? You know, they have Wisconsin, not Wisconsin. Wisconsin has Northwestern, and they are heavily picked to win that game. You definitely, I like that. I like that because Northwestern has a chance to upset Wisconsin. You know, every team has a chance to upset somebody. That's the beauty of college football, y'all. And in our generational era, the biggest, I was going to say Appalachian State against Michigan, but I guess, if you're looking at a subdivision team at the time, but it seems like in my generation, the team that turned the tide was Boise State against Oklahoma in the bowl game that time. And then Boise State backed it up by beating some big-time opponents in Georgia and Virginia Tech. Boy, Boise State was legit. Man, they used to be a really, really good team when Kellen Moore was there. Now he's playing for the Dallas Cowboys and backup position, but hey, he's still in the league. Wisconsin then follows up Northwestern on a road game against Nebraska before coming back home games against Purdue and Maryland. Maryland is struggling, man. They've lost, I think, all three of their top 3 quarterbacks are injured, and they're playing a fourth stringer, or they did last week anyway. And then they got 2 back-to-back road games against Illinois and Indiana before 2 back-to-back home games against Iowa and number 8th ranked Michigan before finishing on the road against Maryland. So very interesting stretch there. And y'all, we're not going to go through every team's schedule and stuff like that because there's a ton of college football games going on. But we'll point out the big ones. Like the next game, number 18th ranked South Florida facing off against East Carolina in Eastern Carolina, y'all. And South Florida is making some noise. This game is not going to be nationally televised, but man, it's definitely going to be a game that you want to, if you have the ESPN app or something like that, you want to check it out. Now, South Florida is undefeated and they're ranked number 1 in the American Athletic Conference because of their outstanding quarterback and his play. Now, they started out the year at San Jose State, beating them 42-22. Also a subdivision opponent, beating them 31-17. The game against UConn was canceled because of the hurricane. It wasn't postponed. It was just straight canceled. And then they beat Illinois 47-23, and they beat Temple 43-7. Now, when are they going to really be tested, you could say? They face off against ECU tonight. And I say the Cincinnati game should be a test for them. The UMass game was canceled. The UMass game was canceled because they moved the UConn game to the week of the 4th. They're not going to miss that game at all. And of course they travel to Tulane, play Tulane. They play Houston, and then of course that game that was canceled against UConn is placed there. And Tulsa before finishing off at UCF. Now, here's my question. Looking at that schedule and hearing those teams, if South Florida runs the table, are they worthy enough to be put in the college football playoff? I don't know. That's a very tough question because none of those teams are ranked right now. However, I mean, Quentin Flowers, who is their star quarterback, team leaders right now, he has 8 touchdowns, a QBR of 53.9, 774 yards. Passing, rushing leaders, Darius Trice, 63 carries, 373 yards, 6 touchdowns. And Marquez Valdez is 228 receiving yards. I mean, it doesn't have like outstanding statistics, but my gosh, they're definitely putting points on the board. That South Florida team facing off against East Carolina. And in SEC action, Vanderbilt coming off of a thrashing. They got took behind the woodshed against Alabama. At the time, Vanderbilt was undefeated. They only got 1 loss, and they're traveling into the swamp to face number 21 ranked Florida. And y'all, this is a game that I was saying Florida might want to not try to look over their shoulder because Vanderbilt's coming to town, and Vanderbilt could be looking to bounce back in a big way. And what bigger way than to beat the Florida Gators at home in the Florida Gator swamp. Florida 2-1, opening up the season against a 33-17 loss against Michigan, bouncing back against a win against number 23 ranked Tennessee 26-20, and a win against Kentucky 28-27. The Gators, I don't know. To me, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. I think that Vanderbilt could have a chance. It's going to be a slim chance, but a chance nonetheless. Because if you look at Vanderbilt, like I said, they were undefeated before they got thrashed against Alabama, and they're actually 3-1 and ranked 5th in the SEC out of that Eastern Division, that tough division there. They opened up the season against Middle Tennessee State, winning 28-6. Alabama A&M University 42-0. They beat a ranked team, don't get me wrong. So, they beat Kansas State, who's 18th right now. They were ranked higher than that at the time, 14-7 before losing 59-0 at home of all places against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Wow. So now they have Florida. After Florida, they're definitely not looking ahead because they have number 7th ranked Georgia. That is a home game for the Vandals. The Commodores, Vanderbilt Commodores. And then they go on the road against Mississippi, Ole Miss, and then go on the road against South Carolina before coming back home against Western Kentucky, Kentucky, and Mizzou, all at home before finishing on the road against Tennessee. So, who do you have picked for that game? I'm gonna say this. I think Florida wins it. I think Florida wins it. I don't think Vandy is good as Florida, but if they were playing in Vanderbilt, I don't know. But I'm going with Florida on that one. Then you also have Houston facing off against Temple. That game will be on ESPNU and the Watch ESPN app. The Vanderbilt Florida game, I'm sorry, is at 11 as well. A lot of these games are in the morning. These are morning games so far. That game's going to be on ESPN. Then you have New Mexico State at Arkansas. 11 o'clock kickoff there. It's going to be on the SEC network as well as the Watch ESPN app. Maryland at Minnesota. That game is going to be on Fox Sports 1. Rice at Pittsburgh. 11 o'clock kickoff. North Carolina at Georgia Tech. 11 o'clock kickoff. Syracuse at North Carolina State. 11:20 kickoff. Very interesting kickoff time there. Central Michigan at Boston College. It's going to be a noon game for you. It's going to be on the ACC network. Indiana at number 4 ranked Penn State. This is the game that we were talking about. That game is going to be on the Big Ten network. Surprised that game isn't nationally televised with Penn State being ranked as high as they are, but these games go in well before then. Indiana is 12-1 with their only loss coming to second ranked Ohio State, losing 49-21 in the opener, which I watched that game, and I'm going to be honest with you. Indiana looks good. Their defense looks the part. Ohio State actually struggled for a while to get their offense going against this team. Then they traveled to Virginia, won 34-17. Their game against Florida International was canceled due to the hurricane, of course. And then they beat Georgia Southern 52-17. Now they have Penn State, and their focus is on Penn State. Why? Because they have a subdivision team coming up after that. They're definitely not looking forward. They're looking directly at Penn State. Now, they face off against Michigan after that game, the 14th. Michigan ranked number 8 right now, but that is going to be a home game for Indiana before traveling on the road for back-to-back road games against Michigan State and Maryland, and then coming back home against now number 10th ranked Wisconsin. So they've got some pretty good games coming up. Then they finish with Illinois on the road, home against Rutgers, and on the road against Purdue. So who are you taking in this? I know the majority of people are going for Penn State, but I'm telling you, if they can force Penn State to pass the ball, of course, as every team is trying to force Penn State to pass the ball and not run with their outstanding running back, they could have a chance to beat Penn State. They could have a chance to upset number 4th ranked Penn State, undefeated at 4-0. Now, Penn State hasn't really played anybody, y'all. Let's be real. To me, out of the teams that they have played, Iowa was a team that tested them, but Indiana is also a team that's going to test this Penn State Nittany Lion team. They faced off against Akron to open the season. They won 52-0. Then they had 3 back-to-back home games, mind you, against Pittsburgh, 33-14. They faced off against a sub-division opponent, winning 56-0. So you look at that and you say, okay, they're thrashing opponents, but that's not very good talent there. Iowa was their first test, and it was a close game at 21-19. Now they're facing off against an Indiana team that I'm telling y'all, you don't want to count them out. Indiana will play Penn State tough from what I've seen Indiana play, and this is definitely a game that you want to watch. Now, if you're looking at Penn State's leaders, they have a very talented running back in Saquon Barkley. He's got 518 yards so far on 66 carries and 4 touchdowns. He is also their leading receiver with 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very interesting. So he is definitely a game breaker for Penn State. Their quarterback, Trace McSorley, has over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns with a QBR of 66.6. Now, here's the thing. I've watched pretty good film on Saquon Barkley. He is shifty, he is athletic, and he has speed mixed with power. But how does Indiana win this game? I'm going to tell you how to shut down Saquon Barkley. You want to force him to run between the tackles. Yes, if you watch his highlights, if you watch his games, the majority of his big-time runs he bounces it to the outside, or the play is going to the outside. The way that he's getting his receiving yards is them putting the ball to him in space. So to me, to shut down this running back, you want to force him to run the ball between the tackles. Do not let him bounce it. Do not let him get to the outside. Because I'm going to tell y'all something about Saquon Barkley. To me, that is his weak link. Because when I watch film on this kid, when I watch his games, when I watch him play, a lot of his runs are going to the outside. He is a good back, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, y'all, I kind of think he's a little bit overhyped. Largely in part because he hasn't been tested yet. Calls him to run into between the tackles, and you're not going to see the production that you've been seeing from this kid. Doesn't mean that he isn't talented, but I also questioned, would Saquon Barkley translate well to the NFL? And if he plays like he's playing now, he's not going to translate very well, in my opinion, because in the NFL, you can't run sideline to sideline. Yes, you can get this kid the ball in space, but even you look back at a Christian McCaffrey was able to run between the tackles very effectively. Now, doesn't mean that Saquon can't run between the tackles, but it's yet to be proven if he is effective running between the tackles, because he's a pretty good sized kid, and he is extremely strong and fast. So that's going to be the test for Indiana. Now, they have Northwestern after that before playing a home game against number 8th ranked Michigan, before traveling on the road against number 11th ranked Ohio State, and then another home game against Michigan State before back-to-back home games against Rutgers and Nebraska and Maryland. So Penn State's troubles are all pretty much right there back-to-back with that Ohio State, Michigan State matchup. If they can beat those three teams and come out against Northwestern and Indiana, we could be looking at Penn State in the playoff picture. So that's definitely a game that you want to watch, a game that you want to pay attention to. Running through the other games, number 7th ranked Georgia at Tennessee. That game is on CBS at 2:30. Murray State against number 17 Louisville. That game is at 2:30. And that's what I was telling y'all. Watch out for that. I mean, Louisville has an outstanding quarterback. We know what he's capable of. The kid is awesome, y'all. If you haven't watched him, then you definitely want to watch him. He is your modern day Michael Vick, if you will. Louisville having a good season, 3-1. They did suffer a loss against the number 3 ranked Clemson Tigers, but they beat Purdue 35-28. They beat North Carolina 47-35. They beat Kent State 42-3. While they're beating those teams, they did lose to Clemson 47-21. It's going to be tough. I'm not going to count Louisville. I'm not going to say that Louisville is a team that can make it into the playoffs. I mean, even if they run the table, they could miss out simply because they don't have any ranked opponents left on their schedule. Florida State is their toughest matchup, and Florida State's not even ranked right now. They're missing the quarterback, so it's going to be very difficult for them. However, Lamar Jackson, y'all, is lighting it up. He is lighting up. He has a QBR of 74.1, 10 passing touchdowns, 1,300 passing yards, and he's leading the team in rushing yards with 337 off 65 carries, y'all, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is getting a lot of mileage, man. He's getting a lot of mileage. And Jalen Smith, their leading receiver, at 379 yards and 22 receptions for 2 touchdowns. So Louisville facing off against Murray State. They should win this game, but you definitely want to watch out for that. Now, Florida State at Wake Forest. That game is going to be on ABC. We know Florida State has lost their quarterback in the first week. DeAndre Francois, who looked to be very promising. We pray for him a speedy recovery. Wake Forest, y'all, is a game that you don't necessarily want to count out because Wake Forest is sitting at, guess what? Number 2 in the ACC, and they're sitting at a big 4-0. They don't want to just let Florida State come into town and do some damage to them. They beat a subdivision team 51-7 to open up the season before going on the road against Boston College and thrashing the Eagles 34-10. They also beat Utah State 46-10 at home, and they beat Appalachian State with a very close game on the road, 20-19. Now, Appalachian State is always a pretty good team, but be that as it may, with their record included, Wake Forest is picked to lose this game. Now, after they have Florida State, they go on the road against number 2 Clemson, and a back-to-back road game also against Georgia Tech. Then they play number 17th ranked Louisville at home before going on the road against number 22 ranked Notre Dame and Syracuse, and then finishing up with North Carolina State and Duke. So if Wake Forest could run the table, considering who they have to play, I mean, you see what I'm saying? The playoff picture it's looking all over the place. You get what I'm saying? So that's going to be a game to watch. It's at 2:30 p.m. on ABC. And you can also catch it at the Watch ESPN app. I think Wake Forest has a chance to beat Florida State since it is a home game as well. Then you have Ohio facing off against UMass, Baylor facing off against Kansas State. You have UTEP facing off against Army, Navy at Tulsa, Buffalo at Kent State. Let me see, where was I at? I was at Buffalo and Kent State. Texas State at Wyoming. Connecticut facing off against SMU. Arizona State facing off against Stanford, another game that you want to pay attention to in that Pac-12. Eastern Michigan facing off against Kentucky. Iowa at Michigan State. Miami of Ohio at Notre Dame. And then number 24th ranked Mississippi State facing off against number 13th ranked Auburn. That game is at 5 o'clock on ESPN and the ESPN app. Mississippi State with one loss on the season. That's going to be a good game, y'all. I think that with Auburn playing at home, they have an advantage, but you definitely don't want to count Mississippi State out. And you have Akron against Bowling Green, Troy against number 25th ranked LSU. That game is on ESPNU. It's 6 o'clock game. And you don't want to count Troy out in this game because LSU is not the LSU that a lot of people know. LSU is not having a good season by LSU standards. Then you have Charlotte playing against facing off at Florida International. You have Middle Tennessee at Florida Atlantic, South Alabama at Louisiana Tech, Marshall at Cincinnati, North Texas against Southern Mississippi, Ball State at Western Michigan, Coastal Carolina facing off against Louisiana Monroe, Air Force against New Mexico, Memphis at UCF, and then Ohio State, number 11 ranked Ohio State, traveling on the road against Rutgers. That game is at 6:30 p.m. That game is going to be on the Big Ten Network. South Carolina at Texas A&M, 6:30 game on the SEC Network. And then, to me, the game of the week, Clemson at Virginia Tech, a rematch of the ACC Championship game. Clemson undefeated at number 2. Virginia Tech coming into the game, number 12. That game is at 7 o'clock p.m. on ABC. Everybody's going to be tuned into it. If you're not, I don't know what you're doing with your life as far as college football is concerned, and I digress. Virginia Tech is undefeated, and they're ranked number 3 in the ACC. They opened up the season against a very good ranked Western Virginia team, beating them 31-24. Then they beat Delaware 27-0. They thrashed East Carolina 64-17, and they beat Old Dominion 38-0. You also look at them finishing up the season. If Virginia Tech can run the table, they face off against Clemson tonight before going on the road against Boston College, facing off against UNC, North Carolina, at home, as well as Duke, before traveling on the road against Miami. To me, that's their final challenge of the season, depending on how Miami finishes their season to that point. But that is the game to watch tonight. Now, who are you picking in this game? Well, it is a night game, and it's in Blacksburg. And if you know Virginia Tech, they don't lose a lot of games at night in Blacksburg, in Lane Stadium. It is going to be a very good game, y'all. I don't think that Clemson is going to come in and blow Virginia Tech out. I think that Virginia Tech plays them very closely, but Clemson, I'm going to pick them to still come away with the win in Blacksburg. Count it. Then you have number 6, Washington against Oregon State. You also have number 15th ranked Oklahoma State at Texas Tech. They're coming off that loss against the TCU Horned Frogs. So you have them facing off. You also have Ole Miss against number 1 ranked Alabama. That is an 8 o'clock game on ESPN, y'all. It's going to be 2 games you're flipping back and forth between Ole Miss and Alabama. Now, we know that Ole Miss has a chance to beat Alabama, as they always do, because Ole Miss does play them close from time to time. Alabama, number 1 in the land, undefeated. So you have 2 very good games to watch tonight in Clemson and Virginia Tech, and Ole Miss and Alabama. You don't want to count out those Rebels against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Looking at Ole Miss's schedule and who they've played up until this point, they're 2-1. They've only lost one game. They're fourth in the SEC. I don't see them winning this game, but like I said, you never know in college football. I mean, they faced off against Southern Al to open the season, 47-27, and then University of Tennessee. That's a subdivision team, not the Tennessee that you're thinking about. Tennessee Martin, I believe. They beat them 45-23 before losing to Cal on the road, 27-16 in a close game. Now, they're not looking over their shoulder because if they are, they have number 13 ranked Auburn on the road before going back-to-back home games against Vanderbilt, LSU, and Arkansas. And then they have a road game against Kentucky, 2 back-to-back home games, Louisiana Lafayette and Texas A&M, before finishing on the road against Mississippi State. So, Ole Miss, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the giant killer, or is Virginia Tech going to be the giant killer, or are both of you going to be giant killers tonight? Shake up the college football world, will you? Then you have Nevada against Fresno State, Northern Illinois against San Diego State, y'all. And I'm going to tell you, for the top 25 matchup, this is a game to watch. It's at 9:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Now, the Northern Illinois, y'all, they're not a bad team. They're 2-1 in the MAC. They're first in the MAC. With coming off of a big win against Nebraska. They had a bye week last week, so they're able to get back underneath themselves. Yes, they did lose to Boston College, but they beat Nebraska at the time. San Diego State is a very good team and ranked 19th in the land, y'all. This is going to be a game to watch. If you're looking for a game that's not super prime time, but does have, to me, playoff implications, if San Diego State can run the table, that is a game that you want to watch. San Jose got tongue-tied. San Jose State at University of Louisiana. Guys, let me back up. Let me calm down. UNLV, Las Vegas, University of Las Vegas, y'all, against San Jose State. That's a 9:30 game on ESPNU. Colorado at UCLA. California at Oregon. That's a game you want to watch. It's at 9:30 on Fox Sports 1 because Oregon, I'm going for the Ducks. And Oregon needs to be ranked. I'm sorry. That's just my thoughts. Then you have Colorado State facing off against Hawaii. Now, you had some games that were canceled. Maine against UCF and Memphis against Georgia State. That is your lineup today for college football. What games are you looking forward to? Who are you looking forward to playing? It's been an awesome time, y'all. I hadn't did anything really, but just tell you who's playing today. Because, like myself, it's a day filled with college football. Going to my son's game today. He's playing at home before I'm coming home and catching up on some college football. See what's going on, trying to catch those two primetime games because they are two very good games, y'all. So pay attention to that. Like I said, coming off of the big win, congratulations to the Washington State beating USC at home 30-27. Y'all, you want to pay attention later today to our YouTube channel, Dmgaming. I have some huge news. Also, you want to follow us on Twitter at Dmgaming5. That's Dmgaming with the number 5, not the hashtag 5, just the number after Dmgaming. Okay. Follow us on YouTube at www. Subscribe to the channel, www.youtube.com/C/Dmgaming06. You want to pay attention to that because I will be posting a video that you college football gaming fans want to hear. I appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Signing off like I sign off as always. Till next time, y'all. And God bless.